All right, now chapter 2 is all about working with Illustrator's basic shape tools. So you'll see how to create rectangles and ovals and stars and spirals. And once we're through all of that, you'll see how to trace out a placed image with all of the shape tools inside Illustrator. So let's check it out. All right, so we're ready to get started drawing some shapes here inside Illustrator. Now, what I've done is I've created a brand new 8.5 by 11 document. Go ahead and do the same if you're following along here. And the other thing that I did is I hit Shift-Tab on my keyboard, and that, of course, disables the panels that I had over on the right-hand side of my screen. We're not going to use any panels inside this chapter here, so go ahead and do the same if you like. I'm going to start things off with the Rectangle tool. So I'm going to go and grab the Rectangle tool inside the toolbox there, or, of course, you could just hit the M key on your keyboard. That would grab the tool for you as well. And my cursor changes to a crosshair. I'm going to bring my cursor over top of my artboard. And to create a rectangle, all you do is simply click and drag. That's as easy as it is here inside Illustrator. Now, did you notice as I was clicking and dragging, I get this little pop-up message right down in the bottom right there, giving me the width and height of the object that I'm drawing. So if I'm trying to draw a very precise object, maybe approximately 3 inches by approximately 2 inches, if I can get that in there somehow, some way. Let's say right about there. Good enough. So that's the idea there. You get that little message appearing that'll give you the width and height. So creating rectangles, no big deal. Just clicking and dragging here inside Illustrator. Very, very simple. Now, do you notice these green lines that keep showing up here? These guys are called smart guides. So if I bring my cursor over top of a corner, I can tell that that's something called an anchor point here in Illustrator. And we'll be talking all about anchor points in a future chapter. And if I bring my cursor over top of the edge of one of my shapes, I can tell that that is a path, something else we'll be talking about a little bit later on. Now, if I bring my cursor down just a little bit on this same edge, when my cursor lines up with the center point in the object, Illustrator lets me know by giving me this little intersect smart guide here. So I know that I'm in the dead center of this object. And that'll happen horizontally and vertically, and not just with the current shape that I'm on, but also with other shapes inside my artwork here. As a matter of fact, they'll show up when I bring my cursor over top of the edge of another shape as well. There's another one there. So that's going to help me lay out my objects as I draw them here in Illustrator. So if I want to draw out a shape that's perfectly lined up to the shape above, for example, I could do something like this. And I know that both these shapes are exactly the same width, for example. Or the shape way up at the top left there, I could create another rectangle that, again, I know is lined up perfectly to this shape's right edge. Okay, so there's drawing rectangles, and there's working with your smart guides. Now, some people find the smart guides a little bit annoying as they are creating their artwork, so you can certainly turn them off. Just go to your View menu up at the top and go all the way down to Smart Guides. There he is right there. And you could choose him or hit Command U on the Mac or Control U on the Windows side. And now my smart guides are off. Now that's going to make it a little bit tougher if I'm trying to line up my shapes as I'm drawing them out. So it's up to you. You're going to have to decide if you want to use your smart guides or not. Okay, good stuff. Now, I want to start drawing out some perfect squares. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything on my screen and delete it here in Illustrator using a keyboard shortcut. I'm going to hit Command A or Control A on the Windows side. That selects everything inside your document, and then I'm going to press Delete. Now, that's a neat shortcut, but be careful. You may accidentally delete something that you needed. Okay, now with everything deleted from the artboard, I'm going to start drawing out some perfect squares. How do I do it? It's very easy. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm simply going to click and drag. And what that does is it keeps the width and height proportional to one another. So if I drag out to the right, it's going to keep that height proportional as well. Or if I drag out to the left, for example, it's going to keep that height proportional again. Okay, so I'm just holding down Shift here. That's all there is to it if you want to draw perfect squares here inside Illustrator. I'll get rid of everything on my screen again, Command A or Control A, and then Delete. How about drawing squares and rectangles from the center? No problem. On the Mac here, I'm going to hold down the Option key, or on the Windows side, hold down Alt and simply click and drag. And rather than drawing from one of the corners, this is me drawing without Option or Alt down. Notice how I'm drawing from the corner, right? Now I'm going to hold down Option or Alt, and now I'm drawing from the center. See how that works? So hold down Alt or hold down Option on the Mac if you want to draw from the center. release option on the Mac or Alt on the Windows side and simply click and drag, and that will draw out your rectangles from one of the corners there. Very easy stuff. How about drawing perfect squares from the center? No problem. Option here on the Mac or Alt on the Windows side plus the Shift key, and that will draw out a perfect square from the center, just like that. Easy stuff. Okay, a couple more things to show you here. I'm going to wipe everything off my screen one more time, Command A or Control A, and hit delete. How about drawing rectangles and squares precisely? What if you knew the exact size of the object that you wanted to create? Really easy to do once again here in Illustrator. This time, rather than clicking and dragging with my rectangle tool, I'm simply going to single click with him directly on my artboard, and I get the rectangle dialog box coming up, and he'll give me options here for width and height. So let's say, for example, here I want to create a rectangle that is exactly 3 inches wide by 1¼ inches in height. And by the way, I just used my tab key there to jump to the height field. I'll click on OK. There it is there. Now, the other thing that I can do is I'll single click here one more time. This time I want to create an object, but I'm going to mix up my units of measurement. I'm going to type in 4 centimeters or 4 cm. I'll hit tab here, and then notice that Illustrator automatically converted my centimeters to inches. Isn't that awesome? So if you have measurements that you've been given from someone else in a different unit of measurement, just type them in here and Illustrator will figure out all the math for you. I'll type in 10 mm here for millimeters, and I'm going to hit Shift tab here, and that jumps me back to the previous field there, the width field, and there is 10 centimeters in inches right there inside the height field. I'll click on OK. And there it is there. Just a neat little trick that you can do here inside Illustrator. Okay, one more thing I want to show you in regards to drawing out rectangles and squares. I'm going to click and drag out another rectangle here on the artboard. And I'm going to switch to my Select tool, the black arrow tool, just by hitting the V key on my keyboard. And as soon as I go back to the black arrow tool, notice these little handles that appear around the outside edge of my rectangle. So I have one in each corner and one on each side. So if you ever want to change the size of your object, just drag on these guys and you can actually scale your object. And this goes for rectangles, circles, polygons, any kind of shape that you can create here inside Illustrator. So there you go. There's a look at drawing out rectangles and squares.